Hello, I'm Catherine Mills Reynolds with the American Fence Association, and today is National 811 Day. You might know it by the call before you dig number, but some of you might not. And so we brought in an expert on the subject. We have with us today Sam Hall, and Sam is the Vice President of the Damage Prevention Institute with the Common Ground Alliance. So, Sam, thanks for being here. And before we kind of dig in, no pun intended, to 811, if you could share with us just a little bit about what you do.
Certainly, yeah. Thanks for having me, Catherine. I really appreciate being with you. I work for the Common Ground Alliance, and the Common Ground Alliance is the national nonprofit that is focused on preventing excavation damage to underground utilities and protecting the people who work and live near those utilities. We do that with a group of stakeholders who are very engaged, everyone from excavators to facility or utility owner operators, fence builders, contractors, and then 811 centers all across the country. Anyone and everyone who's involved in damage prevention is involved in the Common Ground Alliance. My job there is to run a research institute at the Common Ground Alliance that's focused on measuring performance of the damage prevention process.
Oh, that sounds really interesting. Well, tell us then, without further ado, what is 811 for people who've never heard of it before, and why should they care what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So 811 is the national call before you dig number. It's a free service that helps fencing pros and really any other excavators protect themselves around underground utilities. When you call 811 or submit a request online to tell them that you're going to be digging, the utility companies in that area will come out and they'll mark the approximate location of the facilities or the underground utilities that are in that area where you're going to be digging. And they'll mark those lines with flags or paint. The service typically covers utilities like gas, electric, water, sewer, telecommunications like fiber and cable TV. But one thing to note is that facilities that are owned by the property owner, things like sprinkler systems or swimming pools or invisible dog fences, septic systems, electric lines between buildings on property, you would need to work with that property owner or hire a private utility locator to understand where those private facilities are. But 811 will locate and mark all the utilities that we consider public.
Well, that's great to know. And, I come from the contracting world. And so I do remember getting calls, which were never fun. If you are a fence contractor and you have not called in a utility before, or something's been missed and a homeowner says, all the power's out in our neighborhood. You guys have hit a line, and that's never a good call to receive, number one. But then that call also is usually followed up a few weeks or months later by a pretty big bill. So it's important, I think, for our contractor members to know that somebody does pay for that repair, and usually it is the contractor or the business that was out during the work, and whether you're getting billed by a fiber optic line or a cable line or something like that. So, and if I recall, it's been a few years, but the bills are not small. I think it was up in the thousands of dollars. So certainly something we want to do. And you mentioned that you could do it online or call, I'm sorry, on the phone, 811, but that you could also go online and do this. Is there a website that people could check out if they wanted to put requests that way?
Yeah. So there are two ways to go about it. You can dial 811 on your telephone, and that will connect you with the local 811 center. But if you do want to go online, you can. Every state has its own 811 center, and sometimes there are two in a state. If you want to know how to contact the 811 center in your area, you can go to a website called 811beforeyoudig.com, and there is a list of every state's 811 center, contact information, and a bit about each of those state centers. So every state 811 center allows you to submit tickets, dig tickets electronically. So you don't even have to call a person if you don't want to. You can go online and do
Great.
that.
That's great. That's a good resource. And if I'm remembering correctly, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but typically as well, when you do call the number, they give you a window of when you can mark. So you don't want to just run out and do your job the same day. You need to kind of plan in advance and give some time for those utility markers to get out there. And then beyond that, you also have eventually it wears off, right? Is there
Right.
a window where you have to wait and then get it done in?
Yeah. So every state has a slightly different window, but typically 2 to 3 business days before you plan to dig is when you call. If you call 3 days in advance, you're going to be in good shape. Let them know where you're going to be digging, and then wait. You have to wait the amount of time that the state law requires for those utilities to come out and have an opportunity to mark those lines. Once those lines are marked, it is so critical that you respect those marks. The marks that they put on the ground are going to be approximate locations of the utilities underground. And if you're digging anywhere near those marks, within 18 inches or 24 inches of that mark, you really need to be quite careful and dig very carefully. Don't use an auger. Don't use, full force on your post hole digger. Pay attention to what you're hitting under there, and that there could be a utility that is marked, but it's marked slightly off, right? So
Right.
you want to respect those lines. Now, if the lines are ruined by weather or by construction, you're stomping all over them, you get mud, dirt, whatever covering those lines, call again and they'll come out and locate and mark those utilities again. They'll refresh the paint on the ground so that you
Great.
can dig safely.
That's great. That's really helpful information. It is true. We think about hurting lines and cutting things, but there are gas lines and other things that would be detrimental if somebody hit into it at the wrong time or had a spark. So not just for community safety, but also the contractor. It's a good way to stay safe as well, to stay away from those lines.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, I really appreciate you coming on today. And as we're just raising awareness about 811 on this National Day of Recognition. And I know that people can go to that website you mentioned, and we'll post it online as well if they have more questions or want more information. And hopefully we will all be out there digging safely in the next fence season here.
Thanks so much. Happy 811 Day.